For humans, years are precious because they measure the lives of those we cherish. For a time, I refused to believe Lyrian when she told me that the oldest of her kind rarely lived past 50. It wasn't that I thought she was lying, just that humans cling to the hope that those we love will defy the odds. But each new wrinkle on Lyrian's face chipped away at that illusion, until I found myself avoiding her, too afraid to confront how much time had slipped away. At the doorway, she offered her familiar smile, gentle, warm, and weathered by age. I averted my gaze and followed my mother into her quarters. As she busied herself preparing tea, I paced restlessly, surrounded by vibrant tapestries adorning the walls. I had come with questions, but standing there, I realized how little I truly knew despite my years aboard the Ecliptus. Some of that ignorance stemmed from the crew's silence, but most was my own indifference. The past had never captivated me. Torin was consumed by it, but I wanted no part of things already set by fate. Every history lesson felt like grieving for something lost long before my birth. Every story pulled me back to memories of the blood trials and the Zorathians. The ship itself seemed a whisper of past pain. I wanted to shut it out, bury it in darkness and forget. Yes, I had asked Torin about what I'd seen on the Zorathian ship, the nexus that opened into the void, the relentless dreams that haunted me after, but his answers were hollow guesses. He dismissed the Zorathians as mad. And if that was true, perhaps I, too, had inherited that madness after what they did to me. That was one more reason to avoid the truth. Still, with the Ecliptus slipping away from me, no matter how distant that loss might be, I wanted to know why. My eyes lingered on a tapestry depicting Torin Val freeing a Sylari girl from chains. I wasn't so naive. I knew Lyrian Vesar was Lyrian. What I didn't understand was how she had transitioned from one identity to another. Have you chosen a last name yet? Lyrian asked, her voice steady as she placed the kettle on the stove. I don't want to talk about that, I muttered, feigning interest in the tapestries, spaceships, alien faces, names in unfamiliar scripts. I scanned them for something I'd overlooked. Then my eyes caught a tapestry half hidden in a dusty corner, obscured by layers of cloth. I pulled the fabric aside and froze. Staring back was an alien figure masked with 7 eyes wreathed in a sun's glow. Before I could linger on it, Lyrian returned, offering a cup of tea. I think you should, she said softly as I took it. It's an important human tradition, one the galaxy has embraced. Your first name is yours, but the second ties you to your family. So Kael Val Torin, I said flatly, framing it in proper human terms. Technically, I was never truly his son. Lyrian hesitated, her cup trembling slightly. That's something you'd need to ask him. I don't know if Torin wants that name carried forward. It's complicated. You know how he is. What about Kael Vesar, then? I blurted, instantly regretting it. Lyrian flinched, spilling tea across her webbed hand. The hot liquid scalded her skin and she gasped in pain. I rushed to her side, desperate to help. I hadn't meant to hurt her. I was only searching for a gentler way to ask. But I had a talent for saying the wrong thing, even with good intentions. Lyrian raised a hand to show she was fine, dabbing at her burned webbing with a cloth. I remember what you told Silas, I said. How you left to kill Darius. I still can't make sense of it. I can't imagine you harming anyone. You're not that person. I meant it. I truly believed she was incapable of violence. Apart from that one story, I'd never seen a trace of it. There were too many moments proving otherwise. Her quiet arguments with Darius, the way she trembled before General Vren. Lyrian had always been the gentle, Sylari telepath, nothing more. Lyrian Vesar is not my name, she said, reading the thought behind my words. I know, I replied, recalling what Torin had told the Silver Assembly's emissary. No, you don't understand. Lyrian Vesar is my mother. Here's a question the galaxy often ignores. What happens when a telepath turns their power inward to probe their own mind? Our thoughts are often strangers to us. When someone gifted enough peers into those shadow depths, what do they find? Lyrian didn't naturally possess that inward sight. Few telepaths did. It required a mind of extraordinary strength to listen to the blood and hear the thoughts coursing through its veins. I didn't understand when she produced a vial and syringe. As she plunged the needle into the clear liquid, a cold tingle ran up my arm. When she injected herself, the memory of the Zorathian queen's claws tearing my blood back into me surged. Sharp and immediate, I wanted to shout for her to stop, but it was too late. Her head tilted back. I feared she'd collapse. I lunged to steady her, to call Torin, but she braced herself. The panic I'd been about to voice faded as Lyrian transformed before my eyes. She looked younger. The change seamless, her mind's power so amplified she could appear however she chose. If not for the Zorathian memories pulling me toward that black vessel in the nexus below, I would have rushed to embrace her. Instead, I stood and watched. She removed the crimson band from her eyes. In its sheen, I saw another Sylari face, then another, and another, each shade blending into the next across her dark pupils. When she spoke, her voice was layered, not just deeper, but woven with different accents and cadences, as if multiple voices spoke through one mouth. I am an assassin of the Silver Assembly, she said, but not as you imagine. We're trained through blood, and we follow the blood. Our lives are too short for conventional training. It doesn't matter that Lyrian took me before my initiation. My fate was written before I was born. And Lyrian may be gone, but she lives in me. The Silver Assembly intends to kill her through me. Why didn't you tell me this before? I asked, a sharp ache flaring in my chest. Lyrian exhaled slowly. I didn't hide it. The last time I awakened, the blood was with Darius. It's not something I enjoy. It's not who I want to be. Why not? She looked at me with patient eyes, and I realized how foolish my question was. If anyone should understand, it was me. I never understood why Torin gave you that rule, I said. It's not like he's ever opposed killing. Lyrian shook her head. Torin didn't give me a rule. He gave me back my choice, my freedom. I was bred to weigh the worth of countless lives, to decide who didn't fit the grand design, and to unleash mind poisons on them. Kael, if you ever find someone you love, that's why you protect them. You give them the freedoms you were denied, but that makes you poisoned. Just like me, I said quietly, recalling a lesson she once taught me. There was no bitterness in my tone, just the truth of what I felt. There's more to the Sylari than the Silver Assembly, she replied. I only had to seek out that part of my heritage. You don't have to carry the weight of your history. I met her gaze with my crimson Zorathian eyes. And what about the part of me that is Zorathian? I've come to believe that true rebellion isn't just about escaping something. It's about running toward something greater. Lyrian told me the story of Lyrian Vesar, the Silver Assembly assassin sent to kill Torin Val. She wielded mind poisons, planting thoughts that eroded sanity, drove targets into comas and eventually death. But Torin had already been shattered by Zorath's killing words. His mind had journeyed beyond madness and death, and somehow returned. Not as the same man, but one who knew the path back from those dark realms. Lyrian Vesar couldn't kill him. She was swayed instead. Taking her hard-hearted daughter with her, she followed what Torin had seen. She died fighting the Silver Assembly, securing her daughter's freedom. The rest was their history. But it offered little comfort to a boy cursed with Zorathian eyes. I don't recall hating myself. Hatred would mean accepting that what the Zorathians did to me was truly part of me. I never wanted to believe that. But no matter how I denied it, I was damaged. I felt it in Silas's unease, no matter how he tried to hide it. Torin was better at masking his worry, but the rare glimpses I caught in his eyes cut deeper than any blade. Perhaps that's why I avoided Lyrian so often. I couldn't bear to see that same look on her face. She had entered my mind, seen what I endured, and understood how much of me remained mine. That gave her a comfort the others lacked. But it didn't erase the truth. She had her own secrets. And no matter how often she swore otherwise, I never stopped fearing that some hidden part of her recoiled at me. In time, I sought refuge elsewhere. Pushing open the medical bay doors, I found Vren as usual, hunched over his equipment. His milky white eyes didn't lift to acknowledge me. Clad in his white surgical robes, with his swollen head and the hiss of his ventilator, he looked every bit the menacing alien doctor. His long fingers adjusted dials with precise motions, checking a diagnostic console. Your medicine is in its usual place, Vren said flatly before I could speak. I ignored the drawer, hopping onto a bed instead. I swung my legs idly, watching him. Lately, I'd grown oddly fond of his company, much to his clear displeasure. Vren was the only thing on this ship more monstrous than me. When he realized I wasn't leaving, he sighed heavily. Don't you have duties to attend to? He asked without looking up. All done, I replied with a lazy grin, stretching out on the bed. So unlucky for you. Unfortunate indeed, he muttered. I've never figured you out, Vren, I said, resting my head on my hands. Most aliens, at least those humans create, crave company. But you always want to be alone. Why? Vren's head tilted slightly. Most aliens, as you call them, were shaped by human hands. Naturally, they reflect your nature. I am not one of them. We come from different origins. It's only natural that we find each other repulsive. His words stung, though I hid it with a crooked smile. Strange coming from the great doctor. You couldn't even fix my eyes what they see. Vren's ventilator hissed. The Zorathian modifications aren't what repel me. They're minor compared to the human element crawling beneath your skin. I shot him a curious glance. So why fear humans, Vren? I used to be terrified of you. Not anymore. His fingers clenched, joints bending unnaturally. He straightened, moving sharply to another task. You should fear me. That you don't suggest something broken in you. Our existences are in conflict. Your biology and mine are at war. The air between us is poison. My cells corrupt your breath just as yours corrupt mine. Only our advanced immune systems keep us alive in each other's presence. Doesn't mean we can't talk, I teased, smirking. Vren's pacing sharpened. That time passed long ago for my species. There is no dialogue left, only opposition. I grinned wider. Vren never seemed to realize it was a game who could push the other further away. And I always won. Over the years I'd worn him down. First he tolerated my presence in silence. Then came the probing questions, each deflected by his evasive non-answers. Now I had him cornered, almost at my mercy. But my mood shifted and the game lost its appeal. This wasn't that kind of day. I turned serious. What's the Negentropic Principle? I asked, recalling the Silver Assembly emissary's words. Ask your mother. Or Torin, Vren replied curtly. I sat up, fixing him with a hard stare. No, I want to hear it from you. You're the only one on this ship who doesn't pretend with me. Vren froze mid-step. For a fleeting moment I thought I saw understanding in his pale eyes, but it vanished quickly. Silence hung heavy before he spoke. It's the only worthwhile achievement your species has ever produced, he said. In simple terms, it's a mathematical proof, though that captures only a fraction. In truth, it's a vast archive of evidence, a lattice connecting every branch of knowledge. Evidence of what? I asked, absently examining my fingernails. That, Vren said sharply, is what the galaxy has debated for centuries. No one agrees. I frowned, lifting my gaze. He clasped his hands behind his back. Long ago, humanity launched an expedition to the universe's farthest reaches. Don't ask how they traveled so far. We lack such faster-than-light capability now. Perhaps it was lost. Perhaps it was too dangerous to keep. Regardless, the vessel sought the meaning of existence itself. I picked up a scalpel from a nearby tray, running its edge lightly along my finger, savoring its familiar sharpness. They returned, Vren continued, with a proof. Some dismissed it as even evidence rooted in reality cannot sway a determined skeptic. Others tore themselves apart over its implications. And they still do. Just tell me, I muttered, sighing as dark memories flickered in my mind. Vren's ventilator hissed. The humans brought proof that the universe once existed in perfect order. Not entropy, but negentropy, where energy and complexity arose freely, spontaneously from nothing. It makes sense, doesn't it? You must leap through countless improbabilities to explain complexity in an entropy-dominated universe. Yet we see no further spontaneous systems now. And what's that supposed to mean? I threw up my hands in frustration. Vren hesitated. Some call it proof of a lost paradise. Others believe the universe can be restored to a deathless state. Some see it as evidence of God or gods. Others insist it proves there was never intelligence at all. For my people, it's part of the great work. We must restore the universe to its original harmony, or watch everything collapse into death. I mulled this over, twirling the scalpel between my fingers before pointing it at him. You know, Lyrian once tried to teach me that word. God. But the Zorathians taught it to me first. Their meaning was different. They called God the voices scraping beneath all things. They called the universe Kador Hadren, the wide sphere, drenched in the blood of the living. I continued quietly. They believed the voices were the dreams of the gods, dreaming our suffering, and if the gods ever woke, we would have to stop them. Vren tilted his head slightly, a rare trace of interest breaking through his detachment. I'd told him of my dreams before, but this time he seemed unsettled. I know you still dream despite my medication, he said. But now I'm curious. Tell me precisely, what do you see so often at night? Later, I walked alone through the darkened corridors of the Ecliptus, heading to my quarters. I had left the medical bay after answering Vren. I called them dreams because I had no better word. Phantasms might have been closer, as I often woke standing far from my bed, wide awake in some distant corner of the ship. Still, I clung to the word dreams. They could be nothing else. Nothing in waking reality could explain them. But as I navigated the maze-like halls, a creeping wrongness settled over me. The corridors twisted and stretched unnaturally, as if I'd already fallen asleep or stumbled into a waking vision. Vren's medication was never perfect. It could only hold the dreams at bay for so long. I stopped. The steel walls unraveled like threads pulled from a tapestry, dissolving completely. Before me stretched an alien landscape beneath an unfamiliar sky. The Ecliptus was gone. My world was gone. I stepped reluctantly into the new one, clutching my arms as the cold air bit my skin. Strange blue soil crumbled under my bare feet, gritty and alive. Shivering, I looked ahead. There was only one path, a jagged mountain rising in the dark. With nowhere else to go, I began to climb.